A mirror doesn't just reflect, it remembers. And sometimes, what it remembers isn't meant for us. When Prince of Darkness premiered in 1987, most people didn't know what to make of it. It wasn't fast, it wasn't loud, it didn't chase you with monsters or kill counts. Instead, it slipped past your defenses quietly, methodically, and left something behind. This wasn't a movie that wanted to scare you in the moment. It wanted to sit with you, to wait, to echo. Because what Carpenter created wasn't just horror, it was a quantum riddle dressed as a nightmare. A thought experiment where belief systems, scientific laws, and theological myths collapse into each other like dying stars. And yet, he signed the film with someone else's name, Martin Quatermass, a fictional nod to an earlier generation of sci-fi horror that blurred the line between experiment and apocalypse. A clue that this story wasn't about ghosts or demons, but about reality itself breaking down under observation. Here, evil isn't summoned, it's stored, it's studied, it's made of particles, it's recorded in dreams. And it travels not through shadows or screams, but through information. Through transmissions, through mirrors, Prince of Darkness doesn't try to explain what's happening. It doesn't give you answers. It invites you into a space where logic fails, and the only thing left is the sensation that something is very wrong and has been for a long time. These are 20 weird facts you didn't know about Prince of Darkness. 1,987. Unless, of course, you've seen them already. Somewhere else. In a dream. Fact 1. The director who erased himself from the story. Before a single frame of Prince of Darkness was filmed, John Carpenter made a deliberate decision to remove himself from the most crucial part of the project, the script. Instead of signing it with his name, he buried his authorship behind an alias, Martin Quatermass. To casual viewers, that name means little, but to fans of mid-20th century British horror, it signals something very specific. Bernard Quatermass was a fictional scientist whose stories in the 1,950 seconds combined alien forces, Cold War paranoia, and the collapse of reality through science. Carpenter wasn't just referencing that world, he was continuing it. It was also a camouflage. Coming off the commercial failure of Big Trouble in Little China, Carpenter sought to disappear from the spotlight, to work unbothered by expectation or studio interference. The pseudonym allowed him to slide beneath the radar and into something darker, more cerebral. But in time, that decision only deepened the mystery. Fans noticed the script's voice felt strangely detached, almost as if the writer were observing the characters rather than writing them. Like a scientist, not a storyteller. It created an eerie distance. Was Carpenter protecting the story from himself? Or was he protecting himself from the story? Decades later, when asked why he used the pseudonym, Carpenter gave only a sly smile, because sometimes the most revealing thing a storyteller can do is step out of frame and let the narrative twist on its own. Fact 2. That church wasn't dressed, it was left to rot on purpose. Most horror films manufacture atmosphere with lighting, tricks, sound design, and clever set dressing. Prince of Darkness didn't need to. Its dread was built into the walls. The film's primary location, a real abandoned church in the heart of Los Angeles, wasn't modified to fit the story. It was used exactly as it was found. Crumbling, plaster, rusted pipes, stained glass covered in grime. Carpenter and his crew didn't stage decay, they embraced it. This church, Union Church, had been closed for years, its congregation long gone. The surrounding neighborhood whispered about strange noises from inside. No one wanted to go near it after dark. Perfect, Carpenter thought. During production, crew members reported odd sensations, unexplained drafts, footsteps behind locked doors, cold spots in sealed rooms. One grip found a mirror in the basement wrapped in black cloth, facing the wall. When uncovered, it reflected only blurry silhouettes, even in bright light. The next morning, the mirror had vanished. No one claimed to move it. Rather than paint over the structure's decay, Carpenter framed it as part of the film's texture. The setting wasn't just background, it was participant. The church didn't need fiction layered onto it. It had stories of its own ones no one had written down. Fact 3. The dream that didn't belong to the dreamer. One of Prince of Darkness's most unnerving motifs is its repeating dream. A blurred video, drenched in static, warning the characters that what they're seeing is not a dream, but a transmission from the year 1999. What makes it terrifying isn't just what it says, it's how it feels. The footage doesn't resemble the rest of the film. It's shot using analog camcorders, intentionally degraded and color distorted. It flickers and shudders like something from a cursed tape. It doesn't look like cinema. It looks like evidence. Carpenter wasn't just being creative, he was pulling from real theories. The sequence was designed to mimic a tachyon transmission, a hypothetical concept in physics involving particles that travel faster than light, and thus potentially backward through time. That's why the message becomes longer and clearer with each occurrence. The dream isn't looping, it's loading. The characters don't understand it. Neither do we. And that's the point. Carpenter once said the message was supposed to feel like something you might accidentally intercept, not interpret. But here's where it gets truly strange. Decades after the film's release, fans began reporting dreams, real ones with similar content. A figure at a doorway, a message half remembered, a voice that didn't belong to them. Maybe it's just influence, or maybe the signal never stopped. Fact 4. The green fluid wasn't allegory, it was physics. At first glance, the swirling green substance in the glass cylinder looks like something out of a comic book, a chemical soup meant to represent evil in visual shorthand. But Carpenter wasn't interested in symbolism, he was proposing a terrifying literalism. What if evil had mass? In Prince of Darkness, evil is not some metaphysical force. It's a substance, contained, measured, observed, and ultimately activated. This interpretation radically reframes the film. The scientists don't fight evil with belief. They try to understand it, like radiation, like a virus. And in doing so, they invite it closer. It's not holy water they fear, it's data, particles, equations that don't belong in our universe. And then there's the fluid's behavior. It doesn't spread randomly. It rises against gravity. Carpenter described this as a visual metaphor for reversed entropy chaos, not dispersing, but consolidating. Intelligence forming backward. Some physicists he consulted called the idea nonsensical, but fascinating. The film asks us to consider that evil may not be spiritual, or even psychological, but natural, in the way hurricanes or black holes are natural. Inevitable byproducts of a universe governed by blind math. So when that liquid starts moving upward, dripping toward the ceiling, it's not defying physics. It's reminding you it was here before physics had rules. Fact 5. The mirror wasn't glass, it was something worse. The moment when a hand reaches through a mirror remains one of the most unsettling images in Carpenter's entire career. Not because it's flashy, but because it feels wrong on a gut level. It wasn't a digital trick. The scene was built entirely with practical effects, specifically a large reflective tank filled with mercury-colored fluid, carefully lit to mimic the gleam of real glass. Under the surface, pumps created tiny ripples, just enough to unnerve the eye. But the real horror came during filming. The actor performing the shot had to push their hand into the tank blindly, unable to see beneath the surface. The substance wasn't toxic, but it was heavy, cold, and hard to control. Every take was a risk. Carpenter designed the scene to evoke a primal fear, not of what's behind the mirror, but of the mirror itself. He once said, "We look into glass and expect it to reflect. But what if it doesn't? What if it starts acting on its own?" The most disturbing element? The hand that emerges is never clearly identified. It doesn't belong to a named character. It doesn't follow the rules of space or time. It just reaches, not to save, not to attack, but maybe to switch places. Fact 6. One actress was never hired and never came back. If you rewatch Prince of Darkness carefully, you might notice a recurring woman often standing at the edge of scenes, barely lit, never speaking. She wears no costume, has no lines, and appears in at least 3 separate shots near the church exterior. She wasn't in the script, and she wasn't on the call sheet. According to production staff, the woman first showed up during early location scouting. She stood across the street, watching silently. When filming began, she remained, always nearby, always still. No one knew who she was, and yet no one asked her to leave. Carpenter, ever the opportunist, decided to let her presence linger. He adjusted camera angles, widened shots, framed her into the world. She never broke eye contact with the camera. Then, just as suddenly, she vanished. She didn't return for reshoots. No one caught her name. When asked later, Carpenter simply replied, "She belonged there." Some believe she was mentally unwell. Others say she was drawn to the energy of the film's production, something that's happened on other horror sets. But one theory refuses to go away. What if she wasn't an extra? What if she was already part of the story? Fact 7. The soundtrack was engineered to invade your body. You don't just listen to the score of Prince of Darkness. You feel it, not in your ears, but in your nerves, beneath your skin, behind your eyes. That was the intention. Carpenter, working alongside longtime collaborator Alan Howarth, created a soundtrack not just for emotional manipulation, but for physical infiltration. They built it from analog synthesizers, tape loops, and oscillators, generating infrasound frequencies, tones that hover just below the threshold of human hearing. These sounds between 17 Hz and 20 Hz are known to produce discomfort. Scientific studies have linked them to anxiety, vertigo, pressure in the chest, even hallucinations. Some military experiments have classified them as non-lethal weapons. Carpenter embedded these frequencies into the background of key scenes, not to be noticed, but to be experienced viscerally. As characters descend into madness, your body starts to tense without knowing why. The score's structure is cyclical. Motifs fold in on themselves, just like the film's timeline. Silence becomes oppressive, because it's never truly silent. There's always something humming underneath. That's why even scenes without jump scares feel suffocating. Your brain can't explain the discomfort, because the soundtrack bypasses it entirely. Prince of Darkness doesn't just manipulate your thoughts, it invades your perception. And once it's in, it doesn't leave when the credits roll. Fact 8. The science wasn't just window dressing, it was the monster. Horror often borrows scientific words to give weight to fantasy. Quantum, entropy, multiverse. But in Prince of Darkness, the science isn't garnish, it's the mechanism of terror itself. Carpenter collaborated with real physicists to ground the film in fringe but authentic theory. Tachyon particles, quantum entanglement, mirror universes, all are used not as decoration, but as architecture, the narrative's backbone. The scientists in the story aren't just background characters. They're the priests of this new theology. They decipher equations instead of scriptures. And what they find isn't divine, it's unstable. The anti-God in the film isn't a figure. It's a presence that exists outside known dimensions, a reversal of creation, hinted at through math too complex for most to grasp. The chalkboards behind the characters display real, dense formulas, some referencing Gödel's theorem, others drawn from chaos theory. Even the film's dream broadcast device borrows from speculative ideas about tachyon communication messages sent backward through time. This level of scientific integration made some viewers dismiss the film as confusing, but that was the point. Carpenter wanted the horror to feel incomprehensible because that's what true cosmic fear is, not being chased by a monster, but realizing reality doesn't make sense anymore. And when physics turns on you, there's nowhere left to run. Fact 9. The broadcast almost got deleted until it haunted someone. That eerie dream sequence, the flickering footage of a shadowed figure emerging from a church, was never meant to become iconic. In fact, it was almost cut. Test audiences didn't understand it. Studio execs said it looked cheap. They wanted clarity, answers. Carpenter refused. He explained that the footage wasn't meant to be cinematic. It was supposed to feel like an intrusion, as if the audience had accidentally tapped into a corrupted signal from a world unraveling. It was filmed using early analog video equipment, degraded intentionally through multiple generations of copying. Each time it appears in the film, the transmission changes. It becomes more focused, more urgent, more certain of what it's showing you. What you're seeing isn't a nightmare. It's a recorded warning, a message bleeding across timelines from a future where evil has already won. Years later, a crew member confessed that after the shoot, he began having recurring dreams of a shadowed figure standing in a doorway identical to the one in the footage. He swore he'd never seen the final cut. Whether coincidence or contamination, Carpenter kept the sequence intact. Because sometimes, what doesn't belong in the film is the thing you most need to see. Fact 10. Alice Cooper didn't just appear. He negotiated his kill. You might recognize the shadowy homeless figure who silently impales a man with a bicycle frame. What you might not realize is that it wasn't a trained actor. It was rock legend Alice Cooper, and that kill wasn't written, it was imported. Cooper had been invited to the set by a producer who knew his manager, but instead of just visiting, he ended up on screen. Carpenter saw something unnervingly perfect in his expressionless stare and cold physicality, so he gave him a part and, more importantly, gave him a deal. Cooper proposed a condition. He'd appear in the film if he could recreate one of his most iconic stage stunts, a slow, theatrical bicycle impalement. Carpenter agreed immediately. The result? One of the film's most jarring deaths, both brutal and surreal. There's a strange poetry to it. Cooper's silent killer doesn't speak, doesn't blink. He glides through the frame like a puppet animated by something non-human. His appearance is brief, but lingering. He embodies the kind of evil that has no motivation, no speech, just purpose. Even stranger, fans have noticed his figure appears in background frames where he shouldn't be watching from the edges of the shot. Carpenter has never confirmed if this was intentional or coincidence, but it begs the question, if someone shows up on set and becomes the film, were they ever really a guest? Fact 11. The ending was concealed from everyone, even the cast. One of Prince of Darkness's most disturbing choices isn't a visual, it's what it refuses to show. The final shot where the protagonist, after surviving unspeakable horrors, reaches toward the mirror, offers no resolution, no attack, no closure, just silence. But what most people don't know is that this ambiguity extended beyond the screen. Carpenter deliberately withheld the ending's meaning from the cast. Even during filming, the actors weren't told what the final gesture was meant to imply. Some believed it was a dream, others thought it signaled a time loop. Carpenter offered no confirmation, no alternate endings were shot, no epilogue was scripted. The film ends as if it's pausing, waiting for something. In post-release interviews, Carpenter made his position clear. Fear dies with explanation. Uncertainty lives longer. This wasn't lazy storytelling, it was weaponized ambiguity. By denying narrative closure, the film becomes a question mark that echoes long after viewing. So when the screen fades to black as the hand inches toward the mirror, you're not left wondering what happens next. You're left wondering if it's already begun. Fact 12. The equations in the background are actually unsolvable. In most films, chalkboards filled with math are filler random scribbles meant to suggest genius. But in Prince of Darkness, those equations were carefully selected, mathematically precise, and deeply disturbing. Carpenter worked with graduate-level science consultants to populate the film's backgrounds with real, unsolved theoretical problems. Some are derived from chaos theory, others reference entropy, negative time, or the limitations of logic itself. One scene features a closed loop, drawn around an equation that appears to negate itself, a visual nod to the Gödel incompleteness theorem, which proves that any consistent system of logic contains truths it cannot prove. Elsewhere, the formulas suggest the presence of matter moving in reverse, as if the anti-god isn't coming, but has already arrived, and is now unhappening everything around it. These details aren't addressed in dialogue, they're just there for the observant. For those who pause, look closer, and understand the implications. Carpenter didn't need you to solve the math, he just needed you to realize that someone in the film already had, and they didn't survive. Fact 13. The ants weren't just creepy, they were a biological alarm. Ants swarm, that's what they do. But in Prince of Darkness, their appearance isn't just visual discomfort, it's a silent signal that something is fundamentally broken. Carpenter didn't insert those insects randomly. He deliberately used them to echo real-world phenomena observed in hive biology. When an ant colony is exposed to certain electromagnetic frequencies, or when the queen dies, worker ants begin acting erratically, forming unnatural clusters and patterns. In the film, the ants begin to swarm around areas of quantum disruption windows near the cylinder, corpses near the mirror, seams in time and space. No character mentions them, they're never explained, but they're always present when something has shifted. Real insects were used in these scenes. Dozens of live ants were placed directly on actors' skin. Some scenes required multiple takes because the ants wouldn't behave on cue. One particularly unsettling shot shows a dead body with ants pouring from the mouth, eyes, and nose. It's never contextualized. It doesn't need to be. In this world, nature itself can feel what the characters can't. The ants aren't symbolic of decay, they're early responders, sensors reacting to a collapse in the rules of biology, physics, and reason. And the film never answers the question. It quietly asks, if even the ants are running toward the breach, what exactly are they drawn to? Fact 14. Donald Pleasance stripped the role down to the bone. Donald Pleasance, known for his commanding voice and unnerving intensity, plays the priest in Prince of Darkness unlike any role before. He doesn't deliver fiery sermons, he doesn't lead with faith, he is, in every frame, paralyzed by dread. And that choice? It was his. Originally, the script gave the priest pages of dialogue explanations, warnings, theological speculation. But when production began, Pleasance told Carpenter the words weakened the role. He proposed silence, presence, stillness. It was a bold move. Instead of proclaiming, the priest watches. Instead of praying, he doubts. His performance is built on what's withheld, not what's spoken. In key scenes, he stares into mirrors with the intensity of a man who's already lost his soul and is trying to figure out what's taken its place. On set, Pleasance was reportedly distant. He isolated himself. He spoke softly between takes. Some crew members believed he was performing, even when the cameras weren't rolling, and maybe he was, because by the end of the film, his character feels less like a man of God and more like a prison guard, one who's beginning to realize he was never guarding a prisoner, but a door, and that door might already be open. Fact 15. The release date was synced to something ancient, the 23rd of October 1987. On paper, just another fall release date for a mid-budget horror film, but in the world of chaos theory and occult numerology, it's anything but ordinary. The number 23 has long been associated with patterns, synchronicity, and metaphysical anomalies. Popularized by Discordianism and later echoed in conspiracy circles, the 23 enigma suggests that events tied to this number often involve hidden systems, collapsed timelines, and unresolved causality. Carpenter never stated the release date was intentional, but fans have noticed that the number 23 appears subtly in the film, on chalkboards, in distorted frame counts, even in the dream sequence's audio waveform. In promotional material, taglines like "The day the barrier breaks" seem less like marketing and more like encoded prophecy. And while Carpenter scoffed at numerology publicly, in private interviews, he admitted, "Symbols work even when you don't believe in them." Could the release date have aligned the film with a larger, older signal? Maybe it's nothing, or maybe that's the kind of answer the anti-God would want you to believe. Fact 16. Schrodinger's cat was the blueprint for the devil. Most horror films rely on external threats, monsters, killers, demons. Prince of Darkness does something stranger. It internalizes the threat as a quantum paradox. And at the center of that paradox is a reference most audiences missed. Carpenter has acknowledged that one of the core inspirations for the film's structure is the Schrodinger's cat thought experiment, a scenario where a cat in a sealed box is both alive and dead until observed. In the film, the cylinder containing the green liquid operates by a similar principle. It's not merely a prison, it's a superposition. Evil inside the chamber exists in multiple states simultaneously. It is dormant and active, present and future, thought and matter. When the scientists begin observing it, taking readings, interpreting the signs, they collapse the ambiguity. They force the potential into reality. Evil is realized because they try to understand it. That's the most terrifying suggestion in the film. That knowledge isn't power. It's catalyst. The mirror, the dreams, even the recurring figures all follow this logic. The more they're perceived, the more real they become. The act of witnessing isn't passive, it's provocative. Carpenter wasn't just using science as flavor. He was presenting a nightmare in which curiosity isn't heroic. It's what opens the box. And once opened, the question isn't whether the evil escapes. It's whether it was ever truly inside to begin with. Fact 17. The warnings on the wall came from a crew that never finished. In horror, what you don't explain becomes powerful. In Prince of Darkness, one of the most chilling elements goes completely unmentioned: the graffiti. If you pause certain scenes in the alley behind the church, you'll find disturbing markings, phrases like "he is here" or "we failed," scribbled in uneven, frantic handwriting. But here's what's strange: they weren't added by the art department. According to crew interviews, these markings existed before filming began. The church had previously been scouted and briefly used by another film crew working on an unrelated low-budget horror movie. That production was halted abruptly. No footage was released. No reason was ever given. Some say technical issues forced the cancellation. Others whisper about cast walkouts. What remains are the phrases left behind, written in permanent marker, burned into wood, or sprayed hastily with stencils. Carpenter decided to leave them untouched. He even instructed cinematographers to frame shots that kept certain messages partially visible, never centered, never acknowledged, but always felt. One line in particular, barely readable under a broken light fixture, reads, "It was already filming before we arrived." Coincidence? Maybe. But Prince of Darkness is a story about messages bleeding through time, space, and perception. So what if the film didn't start when Carpenter rolled the camera? What if it had already begun with someone else? Fact 18. A real-time glitch revealed the mirror's true nature. The mirror in Prince of Darkness is more than a portal, it's an active participant in the horror. And during one pivotal scene, it revealed its disobedience in a way that shocked even the crew. When filming the sequence where a possessed character is pulled through the mirror, a minor but strange technical error occurred. On one take, the reflection of the actor's hand appeared before the hand itself moved. It was a fraction of a second, a frame offset, but it created a jarring effect. The crew reviewed the footage. No one could explain it. It wasn't a sync issue. The shot had no digital manipulation, and yet the mirror appeared to act ahead of reality. Instead of correcting the mistake, Carpenter kept it. The moment works because it feels impossible, a subtle violation of physics, the kind of glitch your conscious mind might not register, but your subconscious absolutely does. It reinforces the central fear of the mirror not just as a surface, but as an entity with timing of its own. Film theorists have since pointed out that this moment aligns perfectly with the movie's central theme, that perception doesn't just reveal reality, it shapes it. In that brief glitch, the mirror becomes self-aware. And once a reflection stops waiting for you to move, the question is no longer, what's on the other side? It's, who moved first? Fact 19. A frame was found that no one ever remembered shooting. Somewhere in the middle of Prince of Darkness, in a fast transitional cut, there exists a single frame, one blink-long image that still baffles editors and fans alike. The frame shows a figure in silhouette, standing motionless in the church doorway. It's not the shadowed figure from the dream transmission. It's not any of the known characters. Its form is oddly stretched, its posture unnatural. During the Blu-ray remastering process, a technician flagged the frame, believing it might be a compression artifact. But it wasn't. It was embedded in the original film negative. No one remembered filming it. The production logs have no mention of the setup. The camera crew found no matching shot on the dailies. Carpenter himself, when asked, appeared genuinely puzzled. Some theorized it was a production mistake, perhaps a misaligned shot or accidental overlay. Others, less comfortably, suggested something more disturbing, that the film had captured something unintended. A few viewers claimed the figure doesn't appear in all versions. On certain home releases, the frame is absent. On others, it lingers a half-second longer than it should. Whatever the explanation, the figure is there, not explained, not referenced, just waiting. And sometimes the most terrifying parts of a film are the ones no one meant to include. Fact 20. Carpenter's silence turned the ending into a curse. The final moment of Prince of Darkness is a masterstroke of minimalist horror. The sole survivor, haunted and broken, reaches toward a mirror, and then the screen cuts to black. No sound, no resolution, just the sense that something vital has been left unresolved, and John Carpenter has never explained it. Over the decades, fans have debated endlessly. Did the evil escape? Is the protagonist infected? Was the mirror a door or a reflection of a future yet to arrive? Carpenter has offered no comment, no alternate scenes, no commentary track hints. In rare interviews, when asked about the ending, he would simply smile and reply, "That's for you to decide." But his refusal wasn't lazy. It was strategic. Carpenter believes that horror thrives not in answers, but in implication. The absence of certainty becomes a kind of psychological virus, one that viewers carry with them long after the credits roll. It's a form of narrative infection. The film doesn't end, it lodges, and that final image, a hand almost touching glass, becomes a question that doesn't fade. It repeats, like a signal, or maybe a summoning. Bonus fact: the trilogy you were never supposed to notice. Most fans now know that Prince of Darkness is the second part of John Carpenter's so-called Apocalypse Trilogy, bookended by The Thing, 1982, and In the Mouth of Madness, 1994. But few realize how intricately and subtly these films are interconnected. On the surface, they share themes: isolation, breakdown of reason, entities beyond comprehension. But beneath that, there are recurring motifs and references that go far deeper. In all three films, mirrors appear not as symbols, but as gateways. The number 1999 appears in both Darkness and Madness, spirals, static, dream logic, the sense that reality is eroding from within, not without. Characters across the trilogy lose their ability to trust time, space, memory. Some are infected by something alien, others by ideas, by perception. Carpenter never advertised this connection. He never marketed the trilogy. He never drew lines between the films. But in one interview, when asked if they shared a narrative universe, he replied, "They don't need to be connected to deliver the same message." And what message is that? That the end isn't sudden, it's seeping. That what destroys the world might not be nuclear war or monsters. It might just be a thought, and someone thinking it. Was Prince of Darkness a misunderstood B-movie, or an encoded transmission we were never meant to fully decode? We want to hear what you saw between the lines, what theories you've built, what details you caught that slipped past others, which fact hit you hardest, which part of the film still lingers behind your eyes when the lights are off. Drop your thoughts in the comments, and if there's another forgotten film that's been whispering in the background, tell us. Because the moment we start asking questions, that's when the mirror responds.